The Seven Deadly Sins could have been a fun high fantasy action adventure, but unfortunately it had to be instantly ruined by the protagonist being a sexual molester. As soon as he sees a sleeping princess, he doesn't miss the chance to sniff her privates and grab her boobs. Which is of course framed as comedy, and not as something disgusting that prevents most people from liking this guy. Unless of course you're into that shit, so you're obviously gonna like that kind of a protagonist, and you're gonna proclaim it's a redemption story! Since it's a power fantasy and not a serious fantasy story, it's constantly trying to impress the reader with epic level special attacks. The first enemy they encounter can cut 100 trees and split the earth with a single cut, and that's the weakest attack because why not? It's not like the manga cares about smooth power scaling. Everyone begins at epic levels, and that's why the protagonist can reflect any attack back at the attacker, and also has a tavern that can move around because it's on the back of a huge pig. Does it make any sense? No. Is it cool? Yes, and that's all the explanation you need. Obviously, if he and the rest of the sins are always the strongest, that saps away all the tension from the fights. And once you figure out the battles have absolutely no strategy and come down to a one-sided whooping of every enemy, then it becomes a shallow power fantasy. The mangaka constantly wants to make you think every opponent they face is a serious threat and he is totally going to kill them, only to be casually annihilated a few pages later. Which is a shame because the medieval setting doesn't matter in the least, if it doesn't limit or define the characters. The only thing the plot does to keep you guessing is using shallow mystery bait. What happened when the sins were accused of murder? What could the looks and powers of the other sins be? It's nothing much really, they all end up being silly looking and very powerful, like the first one being a huge waifu in skin-tight uniform who acts like a schoolgirl with a crush on the sexual molesting protagonist. What an amazing revelation, did you expect something serious? Despite all that, the plot was moving fast enough to not let you get bored. Yes, it was stupid, but when stuff keep happening one after the other, your lizard brain is kept busy enough, and the positives tend to overshadow the negatives. In only 25 chapters, 4 of the sins were found, and if the rest of them joined in about that many chapters more, it would have been an amazing power trip. And then the power creep appears and plot progression freezes. The objective switches to finding powerful weapons so the sins can be even more powerful than they are already. The excuse is they had to stop looking for the others and get stronger because their opponents began drinking demon blood that was making them even more powerful than the sins. Sounds like a reasonable excuse to need a power-up, until you find out they already had weapons that made them more powerful and they lost them, effectively becoming weaker out of sheer stupidity. The detour in the plot happens just so they can gain back something they had since the very beginning, thus it's essentially a stretching of the story caused by self-sabotage. It was the fast plot progression that was making the positives to overshadow the negatives. Without it, your brain starts being annoyed with all sorts of things, the most obvious one being the constant sexual harassment. The protagonist gropes the princess every 5 pages for the heck of it, and she never seems to hold a grudge. She instantly forgives him no matter how many times he does it, as if she knows she has no purpose besides being an objectified waifu. Plus, all women wear skin-tight clothes and constantly do suggestive poses. Fan service is not that bad if it's a tiny side dish to the plot, but when there is no plot, then it becomes the plot. Looking for the weapons is not the first kind of plot. In fact, it wasn't even needed. The sexual harassing protagonist, for example, can get way more powerful just by tapping into his demonic powers whenever he feels like it. Yes, it's the classic trope of the protagonist having a dark power inside him that gives him a convenient power boost whenever the plot requires one. So basically he didn't need a freaking weapon to get stronger, since he can kick the living hell out of Demon Blood Knights whenever he feels like it. Not to forget how he can just reflect back their attacks. Another negative is the stupid resolutions to dramatic events. Every scene is supposed to be feeling guilty for something bad he did in the past. The protagonist, for example, feels guilty because he destroyed an entire kingdom in the past. He meets a survivor who blames him for what he did, and this makes you think there is going to be a soul-crushing scene coming up. It's also supposed to be excusing his creepy behavior because it's a redemption story! And nothing happens. He is forgiven immediately and the plot treats the whole thing as a misunderstanding. The same thing keeps happening with the other scenes. The immortal guy is accused of being a murderer and there is supposed to be a soul-crushing moment coming up. But then the spirit of the girl he supposedly killed appears and says it was a misunderstanding, so the plot goes on like it doesn't matter anymore. The waifu princess is accused of being a traitor and a brainwashed abducted victim, and then she says it was all a misunderstanding, they believe her and that was the end of it. As for the giant waifu, the drama about her is that she loves the sexual molesting protagonist, but she can't have sex with him because of her size. Whoa, what a soul-crushing reason to have drama. Even that supposed reason to be all dramatic about is resolved when, out of nowhere, she finds a magic mushroom that makes her smaller. And that's it with her conflict, all it needed was getting a mushroom. Bottom line, the dramatic conflicts in this manga are resolved way too easily and have no impact. The filler stops at chapter 50 when the weapons are proven to be completely worthless in the following battles. The power scaling doesn't matter and they rely on Huck's abilities as proven by the 5th scene they find, who has the ability to read minds and manipulate memories. He is by far the least interesting and the most problematic member of the bunch. Aside from how he doesn't have any emotions, he's a puppet basically, he's also messing with people's private lives by reading their secrets against their will, and then strips them of their will by mind controlling them or causing them to have amnesia. This is where characterization took a nosedive, since the Sins attack the enemy castle right after they find this guy, and the thousands of knights standing in their way instantly become their friends because he manipulated their memories. So what was the point in getting the weapons when all it took was using this guy's powers? And the thing is, he's not even the only one. There are more enemies with the same power who can mind control people into giving them more power, or who can mutate people into mindless monsters. There is no point in getting stronger. Also, the characters may have always been shallow, but taking away their free will and making them behave however the plot wants them to behave is Attack on Titan level of personality destroying manipulation. Fuck this ability. The fight at the castle is full of many mini-duels amongst secondary characters for which I don't give a dime about. They felt as needless as those in Bleach, you know, wasting your time reading about nobodies fighting nobodies. The only significant event is the 6th scene appearing there without having to find her. We are about 75 chapters into the story, by the way, so she is a witch with a lot of bullshit magic that can do whatever the author feels like it. For example, she can casually cancel magic, which basically makes any enemy spellcaster completely worthless. Once again, what was the point in getting stronger by finding the weapons? They stopped the plot to get something they don't need, instead of continuing the plot to get the other scenes that would instantly defeat the stronger enemies. Once all the pointless fights are over, the final boss appears and he happens to be the one who framed the scenes for the murder they didn't commit. Yes, another cheap resolution to a conflict. They get forgiven by anyone who was hunting them all this time and the plot moves on like nothing happened. By the way, why the Sins had to run away from the Knights when they were accused despite clearly being stronger than them, able to casually cancel all their magic and to mind control them into being their allies, was never explained and I doubt anyone gives a shit at this point. The plot needed an excuse for them to be wanted criminals so it can be a redemption story, although they could have easily proven they weren't, because one of them can read minds. Anyways, the big bad also drank demon blood to become more powerful, but his demon blood is better than the other demon blood, which is all the excuse you need for why he's more powerful than the others. Also, the Sins forgot how to mind control and how to cancel magic, so he can pose a threat somehow. So, how do they stop this guy from killing them? With the waifu princess unleashing her secret power! Yes, she also has a secret power that comes out whenever it's convenient for the plot. In fact, everyone has a secret power that comes out whenever it is convenient for the plot. What was the point in getting those weapons? Anyways, with her bullshit power, she can resurrect and fully heal anyone in an instant. Because who needs death and tension in fiction? Those things are bad and we only need good things. As for the way they defeat the big bad, the protagonist tells everyone to attack him, and he then counters the attacks towards the bad guy, which is enough to defeat him. He basically used the spirit bomb, which is supposed to be hurting him, but didn't because the princess waifu was constantly healing him, or some bullshit. Anyways, that was enough to defeat the big bad around chapter 100, which is also the ending of the first major arc of the manga. It could have easily ended there if you ask me, but the manga was selling a lot of copies, which was a very good story-related reason to continue the manga past that point. The second major arc begins by setting up more supposed emotional conflicts for the sins. As before, they are nothing much and even come off as creepy. Ban, for example, gains a fangirl that follows him around because he stripped her naked. I kid you not, he sexually molested her and she fell in love with him. That's what women consider love, am I right? But he doesn't care about her because he already has a lover. And it's a little girl. They use the typical, actually she's 5,000 years old excuse. And it makes no difference. He is having sex with someone who has the body of a child. She could have easily transformed into a woman, something all fairies can do. But didn't because the mangaka is pushing a certain fetish. Why do you think the fairy king prefers to look like a little boy instead of a fat man? She's also the fairy that Ban was accused by King of being the one who killed her in the first arc. Only to be proven he wasn't her killer, he was her lover. Oh my, what a twist. He wasn't killing children, he was fucking them. As if that wasn't stupid enough, the other sin, the puppet one, mind controls a woman to be his lover and erases from her memory the rest of her family so she will have nobody else to love but him. That's right, he's having sex with an innocent girl by making her think she has no other family to care about. And he does that while he's cross-dressing as a cute girl, because the mangaka here on is pushing his degenerate fetishes. The show also introduces power levels at this point, as if they mean anything. So what if someone has a bigger number? The Sins can use their hidden powers to get as strong as they want to be, or reflect back the attacks, or mind control him to be their ally, or cancel his magic, or resurrect the dead, or instantly heal any damage as many times as they want. Power levels are as significant as death, injuries, and the weapons they were trying to find earlier. And by that I mean not at all. Which is why it's stupid when demons appear who are more powerful than them, and the only thing they can think of to defeat them is to become stronger. When they don't need to be stronger, they just have to use their abilities. What follows is a very long and generic training arc where the plot is going nowhere and none of those training have something worth developing by getting a worthless power-up. They just waste their time in raising power levels in a series where power levels don't matter. Not even the sexual molesting protagonist gains something, he only gets back the power he already had years ago. So it's basically more filler bullshit like the time they were looking for the weapons. They go as far as instantly admitting that the training arc was useless. As soon as they are done wasting months in training, they mention the seventh sin is even more powerful than the rest of the sins even after the training. So what was the point in wasting time in becoming stronger when they can just find the seventh sin and be done with it? Which brings us to the insanity of the fanboys of this show. Around chapter 150, the final sin is introduced and he instantly became the most popular character in the series. Why is that, you might ask? Did he have the most dramatic backdrop story? Did he have the most mature personality? Were his powers the most tactical and made the fights intellectual? Nope, none of that. He was a one-dimensional strongman who looked down on his enemies. That's the entirety of his personality, and that's what made him the most popular character. He is strong and cocky, in a series where power levels don't even matter, and that's what the audience liked the most. Also, the writing became so bad at this point, not even his introduction was done right. They were running away from the demons, they find a cave with a bar, which by itself doesn't make any sense, and there he is! They didn't look for him, he didn't come to them. He was thrown in the story completely at random. Also, because the mangaka is promoting his sick fetishes, he made sure to have the seventh sin also being in love with a child. If you thought things were bad as they are now, here is where the real downfall of the manga begins. Now that all the sins have been revealed, the original mystery bait of the story is over. We know who they are, we know how they look like, we know their powers. So what is there left to keep going? Supposedly the mystery bait of the Ten Commandments, the villains of the second major arc. Each one of them has a secret that somehow ties to the past of a sin. They are evil counterparts of the supposed good guys of the story. Does this mean they become major characters? Nope, they always play second fiddle and eventually become unimportant. So no, there is nothing left to keep you going. Everything that follows feels completely worthless, like that tournament arc where the sins are trying to win so they can fight the demons. Dozens upon dozens of chapters and nothing came out of it. The sexual molesting protagonist dies at some point and not even that matters. They go in his mind to talk him into returning to life and he does. Yes, it was that easy. This is also when they elaborate on his secret origin as the son of the Demon Lord. Oh whoa, another shonen protagonist with a super special lineage? Color me surprised! So his story is that he fell in love with a woman and that made him good. Whenever the woman dies, she reincarnates and he has to see her growing up and dying all over again. There is a hilarious panel where he shouts, "Don't touch my woman," and because she's just a baby it comes off as more pedophilia. That is also supposed to make it okay when he was sexually molesting the waifu princess, because he loves her. No, it doesn't. They were not lovers in this life, and there was no consent. Saying it's okay to grope her because of what happened in a previous life doesn't excuse shit. Anyways, there's another bunch of battles going on after that, and it's nobody's fighting nobodies. None of them mattering the plot, which for some reason became about the resurrection of the Demon Lord. Also, there is a ridiculous amount of ass pulls. Whenever the author feels like it, he will info-dump a new power, which will instantly be countered by another info-dumped new power. It may seem like it makes the battles tactical and unpredictable, when in reality it's the same issue as in Jujutsu Kaisen. It's hard to follow it, and it doesn't matter in the long run. It's completely unfair since the victim didn't know about it, despite being a command he had to know about, so he will not break it. And it will be an ass-pull since the reader was given no foreshadowing or build-up. Also, notice how once again it doesn't matter how strong someone is, it only matters what ability he is using. And it doesn't matter if the ability was foreshadowed, it only matters if it subverts your expectations, meaning it's bullshit that is meant to come off as a rule of cool moment. And it's why nothing in this dumb manga matters anymore. Death has no meaning since everyone can be chopped to pieces and can then be healed in an instant. Power has no meaning since everything comes down to abilities, and now abilities have no meaning since we don't know they exist until the author decides to pull them into existence. And that's why Marilyn ends up being a loli. We didn't know that. She seemed to be a very sexy woman until the mangaka wanted to throw in more pedo bait. The rest of the plot is complete trash, where everyone constantly gets mind-controlled to be evil and then casually returns to normal. It's about Meliodas being brainwashed to be evil, Ban going to save him only to be brainwashed to think he's a beast, one of the demons being actually an angel who has been brainwashed to be evil, most demons being actually not that evil, the princess being actually a goddess, but she doesn't remember it because of amnesia, and everyone constantly stealing powers from each other. Nothing matters. Nobody is in control. Personalities and powers come and go as easily as changing a shirt. Eventually the Demon Lord resurrects, they keep punching him until he runs out of transformations, and then it's over. It was a very dull final battle. And despite being the final battle, it wasn't the ending. There's another evil power even above the Demon Lord, and it was slapped on as if it's post-ending DLC content. It got no build-up, they just added it for the sake of making more money out of the manga. And when that is also over, they have an epilogue where typically some get married and have kids by having sex with kids, so the sequel manga can be made, which is bound to meet the same cold reception as Boruto, since there was absolutely nothing of worth left for hundreds of chapters. So yeah, it was trash as a whole. The best part are the first 25 chapters when the plot was moving fast, and then it became mediocre until the introduction of the rest of the scenes at about a third of the total manga. The rest of it is random nonsense. And despite everything I said, it was very successful. It has sold 40 million copies at this point. As much as people are hyping up Chainsaw Man or Black Clover, those sold less. That means people like the 7 deadly sins even more than the most hyped up anime of all times. And thus there needs to be a sequel, although it's going to suck like Boruto. I'm giving this manga a 3 out of 10.